Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word, and yes, it is that time of year again. Time for me to make an absolute fool of myself as I do my 2020 predictions. I think I'm going to split these into two videos as I did last year, one for the teams and one for the drivers, but I'm going to start with the teams today. Usual caveats at this point, it's just a bit of fun, don't take any of this too seriously, and certainly don't go running off down the bookies after you've watched this and put money on this championship order, because I will probably be absolutely way off. But like I say, it's just a bit of fun. So like I say, I will start with the Constructors Championship. I'll go in reverse order, starting with 10th place, and I think it will come as very little surprise if I now say the word Williams. Let's be honest, although they were much better in testing than they were 12 months ago, and they might be able to challenge some of the teams ahead of them, I don't think they've made enough of a step forward to be able to break into that top 9. George Russell, although yes, he didn't score any points last year, did have a very good 2019 season if you listen to what the team are saying and what Toto Wolff is saying, for example. And I think he will take another step forward this year. And if there is a car there that is capable of picking up maybe a handful of points over the course of the season, they've got a good young driver in that car that is going to be able to do that and deliver those points. But if Williams are going to finish higher than 10th, I think they're going to need one of the teams ahead of them to have a pretty disastrous season. If you watched Chamber's predictions challenge video last week, I think it was, you will know that I am quietly confident Williams are going to have a solid year, and I've also got a bet going with him that they will score double points this season. Now, double points could be just 10. Don't know why I had to explain what double points was there, but there you go. Or double figure points would have made more sense, but you know what I mean. So I'm not expecting them to be on 99 or anything stupid like that. I've just got a feeling they might well spring a surprise. Unfortunately though, as I've already said, they will still be 10th. One other thing on Williams as well though, I wouldn't be surprised to see a few Q2 appearances as well this year. And if you offered Williams right now 10 points and 5 Q2 appearances, I reckon they would absolutely bite your hand off for that. In 9th place, I've gone with Haas. I didn't want to go with Haas, but I have. I'm not convinced they've taken a step forward either. Last year, particularly in Australia, they looked like they had some very good pace in that car, and then they had all sorts of problems with that car and tyre issues through the season that they couldn't resolve. And if you look at testing, I touched on this in the news roundup on Tuesday, they didn't do any long running until the 5th day, and their fastest time, I believe, came on day 6. A lot of their testing was focused on collecting data, and that to me screams of a team that perhaps aren't quite on top of those problems. So I think 9th place is probably the best we're going to see from them this year. But I really, really hope, and I've got to say this about both Haas and Williams, if I could pick two teams to top that midfield this year, it would be those two. I always root for an underdog. I love an underdog. And it'd be incredible if Williams and Haas could have the best season they've had for a long time. And of course, yes, not going to be taking digs at Grosjean in this one, but they need both of their drivers to deliver this season. If that car is good enough to pick up a couple of points, Magnussen and Grosjean have both got to be there on those weekends where it's capable of doing that. Because whether it's a fight with Williams or one of the teams ahead, every single point could be critical in that midfield fight. And of course, every position is worth millions of dollars. They cannot afford for either driver to have off weekends or too many off weekends. And they certainly can't afford to have the drivers running into each other. They've got to do their bit and deliver when the car allows them to. 8th place, Alfa Romeo for me, I think. I can't see them finishing much higher than that, if at all. I didn't really know what to make of them in testing. I think that's the problem with them. There are a couple of teams like that this year. Yeah, they went out and showed some good pace. In fact, they topped 2 days, one with Kubica and one with Raikkonen. They appear to have very little drag and therefore a fair bit of straight line speed. But they were one of those teams that kind of quietly went about their business for the most part of testing, which is fine. That's what testing's kind of for. But it makes it difficult for me to read where they are. But I think 8th place feels about right. But at the same time, obviously they've got Kimi Raikkonen on board, so he could pick up some very hefty points for them. He's one of those drivers, isn't he, who always seems to be able to pick up a 7th or an 8th place when that opportunity arises. And if Giovinazzi can carry on that second half of 2019 form into this season, they might be a bigger threat than maybe I'm expecting and that many are expecting. But a bit like Williams, I think they will take a step forward and they will be good, but I just don't think they're going to have enough to overcome the teams ahead of them in the championship. Or potentially ahead of them in the championship. I could be way off. They could be the 3rd fastest. Who knows? They won't be 3rd fastest. Anyway, 7th place, AlphaTauri, the other Alpha, or AlphaTauri, whatever you want to pronounce them as. I'm very tempted to go into this season just calling them Toro Rosso, but then I'm sure people will argue that actually it's Toro Rosso, or something like that. Apologies for that awful accent. That was terrible. I will never do that again, I promise. I probably will. But yes, 7th for AlphaTauri. Reasons as to why? I mean, they were okay. In testing, they were pretty solid. They've got a pretty good driver lineup. Actually, I think somebody said it's their most experienced driver lineup ever. And both Kvyat and Gasly did very good jobs in that car last season when they were in it. Obviously, Gasly didn't arrive until Belgium, but you know what I mean. And they're one of those teams, they've got parts of last year's Red Bull on there, which is fine. That's been going on for years, as we know. And last year's Red Bull was a good car, so those parts are always going to give them a little bit of a boost. But yeah, they're one of those teams that could be a little bit of a dark horse this season. They are targeting top 5. I'm not convinced they're going to have the pace to do that. Yes, they had a fantastic season last year and very nearly pipped Renault to that 5th place. But as we discussed during the testing streams, don't forget that that is massively inflated. That points tally is massively inflated because of the podiums in Germany and in Brazil. I'm not trying to take anything away from the drivers, but there's no guarantees that this year we're going to have a couple of crazy races that enables them to do that again. And if you take those points away, they do fall further down the table. So I would say that last year you were looking at that car probably being around 7th fastest, and that's pretty much where they've been the last few years. And I think they may well be there again, but like I say, they could be a dark horse. And they've kind of got a driver lineup that's all about redemption, haven't they? They've got Gasly and Kvyat both dropped by Red Bull, and I think many fans want to see them do really, really well. I just can't see them toppling, McLaren, Renault, or Racing Point. So 7th place for AlphaTauri. On to 6th place, Racing Point, which might surprise a few people. Now, on Tuesday, when I did my little Australia running order guess thing, I said Racing Point would arrive in Melbourne as the 4th fastest car, but wouldn't finish the season there. The reason I say that is because Racing Point have, well, by their own admission, copied the W10. That's why people are calling them Tracing Point. It's a clone. And they've done that for a very good reason. If they've got a car with a very good foundation that is based off of last year's championship winning car, they are in a position where they don't have to do an awful lot of development in 2020 and can start to put more focus onto 2021. So the point I'm making is that I expect the likes of McLaren and Renault to do a lot more development in this season. Nowhere near as much as we saw last year. That's not going to happen from any team because those big regulation changes are going to have to take priority at some point for everybody. So as the likes of Renault and McLaren develop more, that gap to Racing Point is going to close and they're going to fall back through the field. The big question is, what damage are Racing Point going to do early in the season? Let's say, for argument's sake, they are comfortably the 4th fastest car for the first 5 races of the season. They could be in a position where they pick up enough points in those 5 races where they could end up pipping another team to 5th place if the likes of Sergio Perez, for example, can continue to score consistently through the season, something we all know he's very good at. The first 5 races when it comes to Racing Point, I personally think, are going to be really fascinating. I'm looking forward to seeing that car on track very much. Now, this is where I really start to struggle. I do believe the battle for 4th place is going to be between McLaren and Renault, but Renault are the other team that fall into that Alfa Romeo category in that I really don't know how to read their testing. I've got a feeling they are going to be much better this year than many are expecting, but McLaren are also going to be strong. Come Australia, I think Renault might just have the edge over McLaren, and then it's all going to come down to development and how far each team wants to develop into the season. You would assume if they are really close in that fight for 4th place, that both of them are going to develop to the last possible point they can before they've got to switch focus to next year. But for the first time in probably a couple of years now, I've just got a feeling I'm quite confident on Renault this season. I know I talk them down a lot. I did it during the testing streams, but it's because I just can't read where they are. But the fact that they were, again, just quietly going about their business, putting in good times when they needed to, their mileage was good, that screams confidence. I know McLaren were doing the same, and perhaps they're very confident too. But this is one of those battles where one really good result or one really bad weekend for one of those teams could make the difference. I don't know why I think this is going to be so close. The midfield will be insanely close this year anyway, but I think we're in for an epic battle for that best of the rest title. But this is a predictions video, and I have to pick one. So I'm going to go with McLaren in 5th place, and therefore Renault obviously in 4th. I know predictions are pretty much guesswork, but this really is guesswork. But I think we're in for a very good scrap in that midfield. Once again, last year was insanely good. Let's just hope the TV director bothers to show us any of it. Top 3 then, and I'm probably going to be really boring with this one. I've gone with Red Bull in 3rd. Yes, bear with me. I think, as you will see in the driver predictions video that comes out in a couple of days' time, that Max Verstappen is going to be a title contender. However, if that team are going to sacrifice any driver because of any reliability concerns or anything like that, even when it comes to race strategy, it's going to be Alex Albon. Obvious, I know, but it needs to be said. And I just feel like the consistency of Vettel and Leclerc will be enough to put Ferrari ahead of Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship. Essentially, I don't think that the points that Verstappen will pick up this season are going to be enough on their own to beat Ferrari. Of course, I fully expect Albon to be picking up some solid and consistent points as well, perhaps even a few podiums and get in the mix there with Verstappen and those at the front of the grid. Maybe upset Ferrari at a few races. But although I think he did a very good job in the second half of last season, I'm not convinced he's going to have enough of those races where he does get ahead of Ferrari, where he does get on the podium, to give Red Bull those points that they need. I hope that makes sense. It does in my head somewhere. And that kind of answers why I think Ferrari will be second in the Constructors' Championship. More consistency from both of their drivers will be enough to give them the edge. And actually that was kind of backed up last season, wasn't it? I know chopping and changing drivers mid-season didn't help Red Bull, but Gasly wasn't quite consistent enough, and although Albon was much better in the second half of the season than I think many expected given how quickly he was drafted into that seat, he wasn't on the back of Max Verstappen every weekend either. That's not a criticism. I don't expect any driver to be on the back of Max Verstappen every weekend because that's his team. It's just a fact. We'll see though, maybe there will be a surprise. Maybe Alex Albon will get close enough to Verstappen to help Red Bull to that second place in the championship. I do think it'll be a close fight though between Ferrari and Red Bull, and I do think both teams will be much closer to Mercedes. And again, as I said on Tuesday, I do not believe that Ferrari is struggling quite as much as they claim they are. Can't wait for Australia. But you've probably already guessed this one. It was probably obvious at the start of the video before you even watched this. You've probably come to this conclusion yourself. Mercedes will make it 7 Constructors' Championships in a row. I don't think there's much really to say on this. We know Lewis Hamilton is going to be super quick and competitive. We know that Valtteri Bottas is going to be pretty consistent. He made a big step forward last year in his performances, certainly in the first half of the year, and then he had a better second half of the season than he tends to have. So if he can build on that a little bit more, he's just going to help Mercedes with that championship. That's his job. That's what he's doing. They look strong in testing from what we can read into testing. I just can't see anyone stopping them this year. But that's honestly all I've got to say on Mercedes. What can I say? They've won the last 6. They go into this season as the team to beat. The turbo hybrid era has been very much their era, and I don't see that changing this year. Although, like I say, I do fully expect this season is going to be much closer. And maybe I'm just hoping this more than anything, but I'm going to say it. Basically, I'm not expecting 5 straight 1-2 finishes. That could age really badly. But anyway, that is it though for this video. Now, I will be back soon with the driver championship predictions, probably in the next couple of days. I'm thinking maybe Monday evening. But really, all you need to know is it will be out soon. And then, of course, we'll be gearing up for the 2020 Australian Grand Prix. Oh, I can't wait. Formula 1 is very nearly back. In the meantime, though, don't forget you can, of course, follow me over on social media, and all of the links you need for that are in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye-bye.